Hey everyone and welcome to Storytime. My name is Jake and today we are going to be looking at the subreddit r/prorevenge, where people tell us their best stories and when they got revenge on someone or something they didn't like. If you're new around here, please do hit subscribe down below so that you never miss out on another video. But for now, let's sit back, relax and enjoy some pro-revenge stories. Scream at me and my friend in the bookstore? Let me end your entire career. Backstory. My pathophysiology class had a final project worth 50% of the total grades we could earn, and groups were picked at the beginning of the semester. This was a massive project that you were expected to start working on at the beginning of the semester, and if you thought you could do it all last minute, you were probably in for a bad time. It was myself, two other girls who I knew worked hard, and then this one guy that the one girl was crushing on. She had to add him to our group because he was cute or something. I have no idea. I call him idiot every time I tell the story though, because he truly was an idiot. The girls were fantastic, and everyone pulled their own weight during this project, with exception to Idiot. Idiot never once did any of the group project work. He ignored all messages through texting and Facebook, but would answer the one girl if she was flirting with him. He would only show up to class maybe twice a month, if that. He would constantly post photos of himself on vacations, in Mexico or the Bahamas. I'm pretty sure he spent more time out of the country than in it. 1 week before the project is due, he messages the group asking what pages in the textbook he needs to look through to do his part of the project. We tell him what he needs to do and where to find the information. We laid everything out for him. If we did anything more, we would be better off doing his part of the project ourselves. Idiot thanks us and then disappears. We all assumed he was doing the work he needed to do and were prepared to take a hit on our marks because he didn't have anything done up until now, so the quality of his work was probably terrible at best. Project due date rolls around and he's nowhere to be found, and is ignoring all of our desperate messages. We, myself and the two girls, go to the professor and tell her everything that happened, along with screenshots of the literal months worth of conversations where we constantly tried to get Idiot to come to labs with us, or the library where we offered to help him do his part. The professor was not amused. Immediately fired off an email to Idiot and CC'd the head of the program as well, basically saying that Idiot needs to either do his part and show up to the class next week with it, or he will receive a 0, and the rest of us won't be affected. Can you guess what happened? Idiot was a no answer and no show, with no excuses or anything. Professor gave him a fat 0. Turns out that he needed to do this project and do well on it to pass. He bombed every test, and with this failure, he was denied from passing that semester. I'm fairly certain he had to retake that course during the summer, which means he, or more likely his mum, had to shell out another $1,300 just for that class. A couple of months later, in the college bookstore, Idiot and his mum, I call her Screamer, run into myself and the other girl who didn't like him, and Screamer just loses it on the girl and I, screaming at us, saying we constantly harassed her son and she was going to make it impossible for myself or the girl to find work. Idiot's mum worked in the same field that our degrees were for. She sat in the board of directors for the Public Health Alliance for the area, so she was a public figure and a supposedly well-behaved and educated one too. She was escorted out by security shortly after, but that wasn't all she had planned. Screamer ended up dragging myself and the girl through every single college meeting they could schedule regarding our non-existent negative behaviour toward her son, where he claimed he was constantly harassed, yet with no proof. It was literal months of this poor girl and I having to change our schedules for school, classes, and studying so we didn't have any classes or chance happenings, run-ins with Idiot. as that was what college demanded we do. It made our last year, or 2 semesters, living hell because we couldn't be anywhere near idiot, otherwise we could face indisciplinary hearings or worse. Now for the revenge. The security company that handled the contract for the college was also the same company that handled the contract where I used to work. I was extremely close friends with the night shift supervisor, going out for drinks and playing Halo all night with him and his girlfriend, sort of close. So one night after I finished work, I asked him for a favour, on the promise that I wouldn't tell a soul he helped me, and telling him he'd have another great video to share with his friends. I asked him to let me email the video to my personal email account. After I told him what had happened, and on what day and time it happened, he drove me to the campus. Just after the main building had closed, him and I walked over to his security office where they have all of the recordings that run back to the day the security system was installed. He brought the video up of Idiot's mum in the college bookstore, audio and all, of her screaming at myself and my friend. He recognized Screamer. Turns out she's done this before at a different site he patrols, and that he was told he had to keep it quiet by his superiors. I told him he could be as quiet as he wanted, but I was going to get my revenge on her. A little email later, and I was in possession of the video. I found out who the rest of the board members were over the course of a few days, and they were all sent an email with the video of Screamer going ape crazy in the college bookstore, screaming at an obviously confused guy and a freaked out girl. The audio perfectly captured the moment where she threatened to make it impossible for me or the girl to find any work anywhere within that district, followed by her argument with the security as she was escorted out. I never received any replies from the board members, so I just waited to see what would happen. Screamer was voted out from her position the following week after the video was shown during one of the meetings she was attending. She lost her very cushy government job and was last seen working in an old age home according to a mutual friend. I'm not sure what happened to Idiot, but I did hear from the same mutual friend that he never did graduate and works at a call center now. The girl and I ended up finding full-time work immediately after graduating. Never had an issue there. Oh, and the security guard ended up getting hired by the RCMP. So I guess good things do happen to good people. Oh, when she said that she was in senior care now, she needs to get out of that because that's definitely not going to be a safe environment for those people to be in. But I guess, yeah, it'll probably come to her. Bye Bye Restaurant. This happened very recently, and I feel pretty good about it to be honest. So I took a job working in a popular restaurant, as I needed the money to achieve a lifelong dream. I've previously worked at other restaurants and have a culinary degree as well. The owner is a good person. Those he's got hired in the kitchen, however, are not. To give a bit of a background, they leave meat, fish, pasta and sauces out in the open in uncovered containers with the back door fully open, allowing bugs and other things to enter and do as they please with the food. They also do not keep vegetables cooled down and have them sat out close by the stove, which is obviously very unsanitary. I did what any sensible person would, despite being new, and told them how wrong it is and that it could harm someone. Their reply was that I should shut up and respect the elders. The owner sadly protected these practices. And when it comes to teaching me the dishes, I spent my first day just observing how they made the dishes that were ordered, and the following day I was actually starting to help cooking the food. Now, I did exactly how they did it after my day of observation, and yet it was somehow wrong. And despite me doing it the way they showed me how to do it, after the first time they claimed it was wrong, it was still wrong, and they shoved me out of the kitchen. They even went to the owner and complained that I'm useless and that they don't believe in me. that I'm just a dumb fat person who belongs on a couch eating myself away, among other much worse words. The owner came to me and told me what they had told him, but he did say that he believed in me, so that's reassuring at least. I know there can be a very harsh tone in a kitchen, and I'm used to it, but not that harsh. I continued to take the abuse for another week. Should know, I deal with anxiety issues, so not breaking down in front of them took a lot of energy, and decided that enough is enough. And so I sneakingly took pictures of the kitchen with the unsanitary methods and sent an anonymous letter to the food safety department with the pictures. After 2 days, they showed up unannounced and declared the place a health hazard, forcing the owner to throw away all food as they weren't sure how much had been tainted and they didn't want to take risks. He also had to pay a very hefty fine. I must admit, I felt bad at first because I liked the owner, but I had to do something about the other cooks as well as teach the owner a lesson about the unsanitary things. The cooks got sacked, and as they were immigrants and no longer had a job, it meant they could not stay in the country and they will most likely be deported back to where they came from. I had to leave shortly thereafter too, as the owner couldn't afford to pay wages after that fine. At least those cooks got what they deserved. I am positive about finding a new job soon, I hope, as there kinda is a deadline for earning enough money for that dream I have. When he said he felt bad for the owner, I was like, oh, I don't know about that, because the guy was literally leaving stuff around and he was probably telling the cooks what to do, so the cooks might not have even known what he was doing, but yeah. Bully creates his own revenge. So here's the basics. When I was a kid, my dad was in the service, US Navy, and so we moved around a lot. Because of this, I was always the new kid over and over again, meaning I was constantly the target of would-be bullies, and this made me fairly introverted and distrusting of other people by nature. In the waning years of my father's military career, he decided he would take his family back to his hometown and do some recruiting until he retired. So away we went to the family farm built by my great-grandfather. If anyone has ever found themselves moving to a small town suddenly, then you are well aware of what I mean when I say that the locals were very small town minded. For those of you who don't know, the small town mentality is basically thus. If you're not from here, born and raised, then you don't belong there. A lot of small town citizens are closed off and want nothing to do with outsiders. So there I was, not only the new kid, but introverted and an outsider. Basically, a bully magnet. For the most part, I tried not to let it get to me, but I did have some bad days and got into a few fights. Always in self-defense though. And eventually, as people grew up, most of the other kids matured out of trying to be a bully and began to just leave me alone. Especially once they found out who my great-grandfather was. Something about one of the 4 founding families. I don't know. I never really cared that much, and besides, those people had shown their true colors by treating me like crap for years by that point. But that's a different story. This story is about a kid we'll call Mike. You see, Mike was the only one who never seemed to grow out of trying to be a bully. He would daily track me down and tell me how worthless I was. That I was just some dumb farm boy who would never amount to anything and would always be a loser. He would walk up to me randomly and say some pretty nasty things. He had some issues. At one point, I arrived to school to find he had painted the combination on my locker with toothpaste. A lot of weird stuff like that. Anyways, we get into our senior year of high school, and I've long since been doing my best to ignore him. His not being able to get a reaction out of me seemed to really upset him, and even his friends started saying his seeming need to find me every day to simply be a jerk was bordering on the creepy and obsessive. And then, all of a sudden, the verbal abuse stopped one day a couple months from graduation. I assumed he had finally just given up, but that wasn't the case. A couple weeks later, I walked to the end of our long driveway to catch the bus and found that our mailbox had been run over. I didn't think anything of it at the time, other than it might have just been some drunk. I get home later that afternoon, take some photos of the damage just in case, and then fix the mailbox. New wooden post buried onto the ground, I finish my other chores and homework and relax the rest of the evening. Next morning, I go to catch the school bus, and the mailbox has again been run over. I get home, photos, repair it, chores, homework, relax. It happened again the next day, and again the day after that. This went on for 2 weeks, only stopping on the weekend. My parents had reported the smashing of the mailbox, but there was no evidence as to who the culprit even was, so nothing was done about it. I finally have enough of digging out broken posts and replacing them, and so, the revenge. I get up early on a Saturday and head to the end of the driveway. I dig a 2 feet by 2 feet wide hole, 6 feet straight down, and fill the hole with fresh cement, and in the center, placed a 10-foot section of the old farmhouse's original cast iron water pipes, sunk 6 feet into the concrete. I filled the rest of the 10 feet cast iron pipe with concrete as well, and mounted the mailbox on the top. Mind you, I looked into how far from the road the mailbox needed to be for safety reasons, and attached ample amounts of reflectors. Monday morning comes, and I notice the mailbox has all sorts of scratches on it, but otherwise it's fine. I get to my final class of the day, creative writing, and I'm in the middle of a story outline for that week's project when a friend of Mike comes in. We'll call him Steve. Steve sees me and freaks out. "Do you have any idea what you did to Mike's car?" "I didn't do anything to Mike's car. I don't even know what it looks like." "Your little stunt with the mailbox totaled it. He had to get it towed into town at 5 AM this morning." Small town, auto garage is definitely closed at 5 AM. "He's gonna sue the frunk out of you." Okay, but you are aware that deliberately hitting and or damaging a mailbox is a federal offense, right? "What are you talking about?" You don't actually own your mailbox. Legally, it belongs to the post office, so destroying a mailbox is destroying government property, making it a federal offense. "So what? He'll get a little fine, but you're gonna pay." "Oh, no. Haha, it's actually a $250,000 fine, or up to 3 years in prison per offense for vandalizing a mailbox. And since it's happened 10 times in the last 2 weeks, that translates to either a $2.5 million fine or up to 30 years in prison. Steve just stares at me for a moment and storms out. At that point, I pull up the federal statute on the computer I was working on, and Mike comes in, insisting that I'm making that whole thing up. So, I show him the law, and he freezes. "You can take me to court, and I might have to pay a small fine, and maybe even tear down the mailbox, but your life would be over." "Maybe, but you can't prove I did it 10 times. "Actually, I took photos of the damages, so I can prove it was at least 10 times. But even if I couldn't, $250,000 is still a lot of money. Much more than your car is worth, I'm sure. Would you really bankrupt yourself, or even get yourself sent to prison to force me to pay you $1,000 or $2 for the car?" Mike stormed out of the classroom and never bothered me again. The best part was actually the domino effect this created. You see, Mike didn't have enough credits to graduate on time. Wasted too much time trying to be a Dr. Phil case, I guess. I heard through that small town grapevine that he was eventually shunted over to adult programs by the school. Without his car, which was totaled, and unable to afford another, his mother bought the first one and refused to buy a second when she found out how he totaled it. He couldn't get to classes and was eventually tossed out of school due to attendance problems. Without a diploma or GED, he couldn't even get into a community college nor find proper work. Not having access to gainful employment left him living with his mother in a trailer, living off her and the occasional odd job he gets. Meanwhile, I'm now married with a child and living in beautiful subtropical Algarve in the south of Portugal in Europe. Mike, if you're out there reading this, I only have one real question. Just how did that mailbox taste? That's actually insane how it's a $250,000 fine. I don't know if that's how true that is, but that would be insane if it was that much. And you gotta give it to Mike for putting in the dedication to run it over, but yeah, he got what he deserved. Hey everyone, I hope you all had a really good day and that you enjoyed that video. If you want to check out some other videos, then click on screen right now, or check out the playlist down below. If you enjoyed that video, then please do leave a like, and if you want to submit your own stories, then you can do so by joining the Discord in the top link in the description. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you very soon.